21 is coming. Is that time of pre-season again, where supporters start to think about where their clubs will finish, who will get Europa League places, who will get into the Champions League spots, and who will be crowned the Kings of England. Yes, it's time for pre-season predictions 2026-2027. I'll start by saying a final word on last season. Manchester United finished third and comfortably third. The top five, well, it kind of picked itself in the end. Actually, Aston Villa got there when everyone thought they'd drop off, and they actually finished quite strong. Liverpool, well, they got that fifth position because obviously their English clubs did really well in Europe, or just about enough to make sure we solidified that fifth place. And it's kind of like everybody else helped Liverpool out and thought they'd give them a pass and get them back into the Champions League. And obviously, a team like Bournemouth last season, who did really well in drawing a million games, being a small club like Bournemouth, Iriolo did really well. And then obviously the title race, or was it a title race? Wasn't it a title race? Well, again, Man City did their best just to, mess it up along the way, because everyone knows if Man City win a title, no one really cares. Why? Because obviously their 115 charges, well, nobody knows what's going to happen, when it will happen, and when they'll be found guilty. And then Arsenal, obviously being champions, the way they played, the controversy they courted, the type of squad they had, and in the end, it kind of just, they stumbled over the line. And looking back at ourselves, Man United had a fantastic second half of the season. They well deservedly got into the top five. Definitely did enough. Was quite consistent. Carrick beat everyone. We had some fantastic matches, and in the end, what was it, 5 wins out of 6? That poor kid who needs to cut his hair, he nearly got there. But again, I think we only need to win 3 games now for him to get his hair cut. I think he's gone into doing braids now. He's just come out of it, and seeing that the next season and what fixtures we've got to start with, Man United might win that 5 games in a row for him. So, in a nutshell, last season, fantastic for Manchester United. And I guess the way I want to do this is basically build a criteria, a framework where I can work with when I'm judging my top 6. Now, what I'm going to do is not do the whole kind of Premier League table, the who's going to get relegated kind of thing. I want to focus on the winners, everyone from 6 and above. Obviously, England will be favourites to get one of them a fifth spot again. And with the amount of teams that are in Europe again this season, I think it went down to 8th or 9th position. So it's really important for me that I think it's fair to say let's just focus on the top 6 for now. And with the criteria, I think it's quite fair on how I'm going to do it. And one of, I guess, my 4 or 5 points that I have to judge them on, will give us a good enough scope to judge, in my belief, who will be, in the top 6 next year. So number 1 on my list is obviously going to be transfers. That's my first criteria that I'll judge teams on. And yes, it's coming towards the end of July. Some transfers have happened. Squad building is definitely going on at the moment. I guess only really a few clubs have signed marquee players. And yes, Chelsea and Tottenham have absolutely blown the transfer market up. It's ridiculous what they're doing. They're making good players into players they're not. Over £100 million for Morgan Rogers, Elliot Anderson. I mean, Spain just won the World Cup. They're probably looking at England and thinking, look how many £100 million players are in the squad. And yet, none of them can win, the Euros or the World Cup. So, especially, going out against Argentina the way they did and what Spain did to Argentina in the final. So, it's absolutely pathetic. And you've got to think that the way the transfer window is, the Premier League players, the amount of money they're exchanging for is just ridiculous. Liverpool were doing it last year. I mean, they're itching to go out and buy another £100 million player again. So, some big names have happened. Obviously, you've got teams like City, you've got some big names in there already. But I think it's a key point. The second thing I'm going to judge them on is something like something that I think is important, and that's managers. There's been a lot of high profile manager changes. Jabi Alonso's come in. Do people see him as a failure at Real Madrid, or a failure of Real Madrid to support him in what he wanted to do? I think it's probably a bit of the both. You've got Enzo Maresca taking over from Pep Guardiola. Now, we know from experience, when you replace a huge manager, a figure like, a Pep Guardiola, or like we saw in Alex Ferguson, the next manager is destined for failure, or even the manager after that. And in our case, the manager after that, and after that, and after that. And hopefully, right now, we've got the right one in Carrick. It's Carrick's first full season. You've got Iraola going from Bournemouth, stepping up into a huge club like Liverpool. Will he be given the time? This type of football that people were drooling over. Maybe I'm hyperbolizing it a bit, but I guess in the context that he played for Bournemouth, yes, his style of football is going to be elevated and people are going to say he's done really, really well. But if you dig down into the numbers, yes, he did really well, but a load of draws. And the teams around him did drop off quite heavily. And then he's got to step up to a big club like Liverpool. And one of the big things is managing egos, managing big money players, the expectation. So I think it's really important to judge the top six on the manager situations as well, and some of the obviously the steady ADs that are already there in Arteta. You've got obviously Unai Emery for Aston Villa, and that's going to be for me a very key point. Now the third thing I would say is competitions. Now, I'm going to already just tell you now, I think it's ridiculous of what people, supporters, and pundits keep saying about Manchester United, how they're going to be under 3 games a week. Well, first of all, we'll probably play an average of 2 games a week. That's absolutely ridiculous. The only other time you start playing 3 games a week is towards March, when you get into February, March, into the latter part of the competitions. So let's take a step back. Manchester United, if you can't, I've said this before, if you've counted up all the games that Manchester United played since the Premier League began, Man United in all competitions have probably played the most games. The season before last, when we got to the Europa League final, we were playing 2, 3 games a week then. So I don't understand. It doesn't, regardless of what positions we came in, but we're still playing the games. So this thing about Man United, how they're going to handle, they won't be able to do with 3 games a week. Well, number one, we're not going to be playing 3 games a week for a while. And number two, it's going to be average of 2 games a week. And number three, Manchester United and the board aren't stupid enough to just say, oh, let's just stick with the same squad as last year and let Casemiro go. So it's very important for me that competitions is judged on who will get into the top six. And then finally, for me, league fixtures. The reason why I say that is because I'm not one of them people that just say, oh, well, we have to play everyone twice, who doesn't really matter when they come. Well, just imagine you played Arsenal, City, and Liverpool, and Chelsea in 4 games in a row, all away, or home away, home and away, home and away, and it's in December. You know, yeah, it might be hypothetical, but it can happen, these things. And just to wash it away and say, oh, it doesn't really matter. Well, for me, I don't think like that, and each to their own. Respect everyone's opinion, but I think it's important that you look at the league fixtures, because if you have a good December when the fixtures get really congested, you're playing home games, teams at the lower end of the league. If you have a really good end of the campaign, imagine playing a relegated team at the end of the season, your last game, you needed to win the league, etc., or get into one of the top 6 positions. You start off the league. I've already said it. You can't win the league at the beginning of the season, but you can damn well lose it, and you can make a real pig's ear of it, and just start getting into real scraps with other teams to get into these positions. And the only way you avoid that is by getting points on the table quickly. So it's very important that we look at the league fixtures, and if some of these teams have really good runs and favourable runs, I think that's a really key point. So let's get into it. I mean, everyone will have their predictions. I really want a lot more comments start coming in. I really want some more engagement. I think if we can all get our predictions in there in the comments, start thinking about where people think Man United will finish, what clubs will surprise us, who will drop off, who will actually have an absolute, Liverpool type, fall off, or will Liverpool have another huge fall off? That'll be fantastic. And with the new managers coming in, will they be able to handle the pressure of working at a big club? Will trying to implement their styles. Just remember when Arnie Slot tried to do that, he got sacked in the end. 10 games into last season, their fans wanted him out. So let's see. Let's see how it goes, and see where our top six lies. my first prediction for the top six, and I'm going to work from sixth to first. Everyone might be a little bit surprised about this one based on what happened has been going on in the last 2 seasons. But I think this team, because of the circumstances surrounding their situation and going into next season, I think they will just about get into the top six. And I think that's going to be Spurs. The reason why I say that is because number one game a week. Number two, they've bored, have done something absolutely ridiculous and just completely blown everyone out the water, shocked everyone, and signed £100 million players. And it does look like they are trimming down their squad. They're getting rid of some really poor quality players or players that need to be moved on. And they're going to be continuing to spend. And I think they're going to be a team that spends their way out of this. And I could just see it right now where De Zerbi, again, number two, will be their manager. So he's going to be really important to them. And one thing De Zerbi does, he's got that passion. There was a lot of talk at one point. Will Manchester United, will Manchester United going for him? The style of play he had at Brighton. Now again, he did a decent job at Marseille, but kind of went really bad for him at the end. I think he just a lot of disagreements. That kind of the squad didn't really perform as it should have. And I don't watch much French football, and definitely didn't watch De Zerbi. It kind of you expect it to fizzle out because the two kind of relationships between club and manager probably ended up didn't souring and went down south. And who knows, that could continue in the Premier League. But what we've seen him in the Premier League has actually been quite positive. And I reckon give him time each week. Yeah, I'll have to say it. Just like Man United got, like Carrick got, I could see that he gets to tune out the squad. And having that midfield that he has now, you have to say that you have to give him a chance. And based on that expectation that they don't have much football to play, I'd actually say they'd get into the top six. Now, whether or not, I'm not going to discuss to get further because a lot of people have already put them down to maybe even finishing mid-table and writing them off. The reason why I don't write people off because I don't write ourselves off. And yes, it's very simple to say, well, they could have done that and they could do this. And yes, it's all kind of hypothetical, but that's my prediction. And I think based on that, based on the squad, the manager, I think what they're building, how many games they're going to be playing, the transfers that they're doing right now, I think it's quite straightforward actually, and many people might say it's predictable, and that's why it's a prediction that Spurs will finish sixth. Now, for number five, the fifth place team, well, again, quite similar fashion to Tottenham, a team that's going to use this to their advantage, the situation of playing one game a week. They've probably looked at Manchester United last year and thought, wait a minute, we love spending money, we love having huge squads. They've got a managerial change. So let's just tick number one off as transfers. And that's obviously, they're going to be spending a lot of money. Number two, they've got a new manager. So number three, the squad and how it's going to be built. Number four, the competitions. Again, only one game a week. And number five, their league fixtures. And I think that's, the team for me is going to finish fifth. And again, people might think it's quite predictable, but it's going to be Chelsea. Chelsea don't want to spend that many years out of the big places. At the end of the day, they are a very, very well established Premier League club who've consistently played in top competitions. As much as I don't like the way they set up the way they run, they always seem to pick up the league when everyone else is shit. Every time they've won it, they've never, very rarely, they've only retained it once, and that was under that top squad, one of the best Premier League squads under Jose Mourinho's first term. But they've never obviously shown doing it again, bring two leagues in a row. And I think eventually what will happen is they will throw, let's talk about transfers. They're going to throw a lot of money at it. They've already obviously got Morgan Rogers, which even for me, that even above the Elliot Anderson one is up, even the Tonali one, who is ridiculous. I mean, Morgan Rogers, yes, top player. You know what? I think he's a number 8, box to box. You know what? Is he? I don't think he's a number 10 quite. Number 10 is definitely not number 6, not what I saw of him anyway. And I think that he's got a lot of power, pace, technique. It's, he can score a goal for you, but he does lack in the defensive side. Maybe, in the positionally. But going for 100 million for him, Well, this is why I think, you know what, Chelsea will probably continue to spend. And just remember, they've already got players coming in that have already signed, like Quenda, who I think actually has worked out really well for them because the second reason why I reckon is obviously Javi Alonso. I think they've given him the role as manager. They've promised him a lot more control. But Chelsea, the bin fire that they are, can very just easily turn on very quickly. You know, things can go from bad to worse in a second. And I've, one thing I will say is that yes, it might be difficult to implement that 3-4-3 in the Premier League. He'll probably need some time to bed it in, and maybe that might take a season or two. But Quendo's actually worked out for him because he played under Amorim in that system in Sporting Lisbon. And he will sign players that will suit his style. They'll get rid of a lot of players. They've obviously sold Santos to us, to Manchester United, which might inadvertently, be bad for them because he's an up and coming, very, very top player. But then you have to look at it and say, was he going to get into a midfield with Enzo Fernandez, Morgan Rogers, and obviously Caicedo? So I think, you know what? They will go on runs. And these teams, and when I look at the league fixtures, yes, they've got sticky fixtures here and there. They've got games to play when, when they're against good teams. But I'd have to say that they'll go on these runs, and that's what Chelsea do to get into these positions. And again, competitions wise, when you judge them by the competition, it's really important that you have to say this, and this caveat is big: one game a week. Xavi Alonso will have time to implement his style with one game a week, not having to worry about injuries much. And I think you'll get a tune out of them. And again, it's quite predictable to say this, but it's a prediction, and I predict them to be fifth. So moving up, and I think, you know what, only based on the squad they've already got and the fact that they will panic buy a load of big names and more £100 million players, I think Liverpool will be fourth. The reason why is number one, their squad is getting out of control at the moment. I think McAllister will come back from the World Cup. I think he'll be quite disinterested. I think he's going to want to move out of the Premier League, especially with all the controversy that some of these Argentinian players have courted, at the end of the World Cup. I think the defense is, especially in Van Dijk, is aging. They've got rid of Kanate. I don't know who they're going to bring in next. Yes, they've got that front three, and Salah's gone, which is a huge, obviously, void for them. But it's not like he performed anyway. But again, when you don't have a performing Salah, you see what happened to him last season. But then they've got obviously Etatike, and they've got Isak. Now, again, for me, yeah, on they if they potentially can have fantastic seasons, but I haven't seen it from them. They're still going to be injury prone. I don't think the midfield is quite there quite yet. And yes, they've signed a new player, I think, from France recently. But again, there's potential. I think they're going to throw a lot of money at it, and I think they'll do enough because of that. I think they've got enough experience there in the squad already. They'll go on these runs when it comes to league fixtures. They'll start off probably, I think they'll start off pretty slow, and then they'll get their way into it. But again, when it comes around about Christmas, I think that when they start playing the tougher games, I think they're going to start suffering. Obviously, with the competitions they're in, I mean, they're obviously well used to it. And I think the most important reason why they'll probably come fourth and they won't challenge much is probably because of Iriola. Now, again, will he? Look, there's a world that we could possibly live in, and they could go and be second or win the league. Who knows? But looking at it right now, Ariola, I think, will have to implement this style of football, but because of the way wants to play, because of the people he's going to manage, because of the expectation, the media, all that kind of thing that comes involved into this, I think it's going to be a bit of a struggle for him in the sense that it might be a bit of a fight to get into the top four. And I think the teams around him will help out, but I think they'll do enough. I mean, I'm not going to speak too much about them because I think they'll just be a bore watch, and I think they'll do enough because I think ultimately, if you're going to watch Ariola's type of football next year, I think that's what it's going to be. It's going to be job done kind of football, 1-0, 2-1s, a lot of draws, and I think you'll get the job done. Okay, so now for the top three, and I think it's pretty straightforward to say this one. And the only reason why I'm going to say this because there's no proof They've never done it before. The mentality, the way the Premier League is changing at the moment with the rules and regulations, and the way I think that, you know what, the squad might be fatigued a bit mentally and physically, and that's going to be Arsenal. They will go into obviously they will go into the season as favourites. Obviously, when I look at transfers, there was just some recent news from David Ornstein that they're exploring a deal to sign Vinny Jr. I mean, they're going to have to break the bank for him. He's going to want 400k plus. It's going to have to be a plus £100 million fee for him. And don't get me wrong, I think Vinny Jr. is an amazing player. He is world class, but he's becoming into that mold where it's all about him mode now. He wants to carry the team on his shoulders. He keeps the ball too long. He doesn't click anymore. But the mentality, the way the Premier League is going to come down hard on corners, the physicality of the game, the way their injury record is. I mean, Declan Rice looks like he needs a long rest. But Bukayo Saka may be the same. Obviously, Saliba's gone for a little while. And then they've already got a really big squad as it is. And yes, they might have sold a player here or there, but they'll have loads of money to spend. But will their club want to spend it after spending hundreds of millions over the last few years? Will it be time for them to start thinking, actually, it's time to rein it in a bit now with champions? Let's stick with what we've got and just add a bit here there, because they're probably thinking that yes, we've got a good enough squad to do it. Now, yes, they will be in the Champions League easily for me. Yes, they'll go far in competitions. I think, Mikel Arteta as the manager, I think, you know what, he's done fantastically well. But that kind of, that dopamine hit they've got at the top, it's only down from now. The mentality of keeping the Premier League is the hardest thing to do. Not many clubs have done it. So I just can't see it happening. And yes, like I've said, they'll be obviously as champions, they'll go into it as favorites. But based on history, I can't see it happening. And I think there will be a bit of a drop off because referees and Premier League rules, maybe their squad will actually be, work against them. So now for the top two. Now here's where you're thinking, well, there's only two clubs left, obviously. And yes, for me, I'm going to say it. I mean, when I tell you my team is going to finish second, obviously you will think it was going to be champions. But I'll say it. I think Manchester City will finish second. And that was purely because two reasons. Again, they're going to buy their way out of trouble. They've already got £117 million in Elliot Anderson, and I think they've bought him because they've known for a while that Rodri is looking to leave. Isn't Rodri? Tell me, what do you think? Isn't Rodri? Doesn't he highlight the failures of Manchester United scouting department? He didn't even come from a big club. I didn't. Tell me who knew who Rodri was before he signed for City. Since he's been there, he's been Ballon d'Or, won the treble, won the Euros, won the World Cup. And I think players like Elliot Anderson in there, they'll do really, really well. And I think they'll sign a couple of more players, some really high profile players. But get them, what will ultimately stop them from winning the league is probably their manager change. The environment will be different. Everything won't feel the same. Everyone will keep referring back to them days. Pep Guardiola didn't do this. Pep Guardiola didn't do that. Enzo Maresca in the Chelsea experiment, it did not work at all. And based on what some Chelsea supporters said, they were like, yeah, he was actually a decent manager. It's just the whole situation with Chelsea. It didn't match. It didn't correlate with him. So that's what I probably would think that. Sorry, I've got a creaking chair. I don't know if you can hear it, but yeah. So that situation, that kind of relationship wasn't symbiotic that it should be. It was very much fractured. What style of play they were playing, the players they had, that very bloated squad they had. But apparently, he's obviously worked under Pep Guardiola, and Pep Guardiola produces the greatest managers in the world, like Eric Ten Hag and Mikel Arteta. I think it's a bit of a misnomer or a bit of a misrepresentation when they talk about things like that. Managers will work under very top managers for experience, but when they go on into their own managing career, they want to implement their own style in their own way. It doesn't necessarily mean that Pep Guardiola had them in a classroom teaching them with a blackboard behind them and every tactic and the way he plays. No, they were obviously using and putting their input in as well, watching and learning. But ultimately, these type of managers go on and doing their own styles, and a lot of the times they're unsuccessful. I can't see Enzo Maresca just coming out of the blue and just, you know what, continuously. I mean, obviously they didn't win the league last year, but going out and winning the league with them. And again, these are predictions, and obviously there'll be people out there who think yes, Man City will win the league. They'll certainly have more chances than others. So now it's time for the main one, the one that we've all been waiting for. And let me start by saying, what is the point of being a football fan if you can't have hope, if you can't believe in your team, if you can't believe in the team that is one of the biggest or is the biggest club in the world, the most successful Premier League club when it comes to how many Premier Leagues they've won? Why can't you think that Manchester United aren't going to win the league? Why would you think that? Tell me. If you're a Man United supporter, fine. Have your opinion, fantastic, love, respect. And don't get me wrong, are we all thinking with our hearts or we're thinking with our brains? Well, maybe, but you're not gonna tell me that there isn't a chance. You're not gonna tell me that if you're having a good summer. You're not gonna tell me if the club situation has changed, the background staff and the manager. You're not gonna tell me if you get some good transfers in there. You're not gonna tell me that when other clubs will come out of there and had good seasons with poor managers or managers that you didn't expect and got back there after 30, 40 years, got back there after 8 years of trying and trying under one manager with a really poor style of football. You can't tell me that Manchester United cannot challenge for the league. And that's why I reckon Manchester United will win the Premier League next year. Because, number one, the transfer window. I think Manchester United will get it right. There's already talk, obviously, about Chouameni. No one wants to get on board the choo-choo train, but it could happen. It's all depending on if Real Madrid start signing Diamonde, which they're gonna look like they're gonna do now. If Real Madrid get Rodri, they're gonna be spending big. But at the same time, I think Jose Mourinho loves that kind of combative player, the one that's gonna, have that nasty attitude, the controller in midfield, the Makelele's, you know. He had that at Chelsea. This might not happen at all, but Simon Stone says that even though he's Simon Stone in the UK is a very good reputable journalist, and he said that yes, he might have signed a contract, but that doesn't necessarily mean he won't be sold. So, and again, it'll be very difficult with the wages and the transfer fee. So it's a very difficult signing, but ultimately, it's all about transfers. And Manchester United have been very shrewd. Tillemans, what a great transfer. Under the radar, out of nowhere, £35 million. That player next to Kobe are playing with the number six, like Santos, or the six that we do get. Imagine we get a Baleba next to him. You got Kobe Manu still, who's just improving. Bruno Fernandes, you got the front three. Get them support like a Mateta up front with them. You've just signed this kid, Thompson, Tinian Thompson. Very good and very athletic, very fast, very skillful. You got some of our academy players. And yes, the defense has probably got a bit of a question mark with the injuries. Yes, but again, Andy Mitz has said that Lissandro Martinez's injury at the World Cup wasn't serious. They do expect him back for the start of the season. The only really one that I'm really, really worried about is obviously Delict, but they expected him to be back by autumn. And that's why I'm thinking Manchester United have a real good chance. And it's a prediction. It's my prediction. I think if I talk about the manager, he's brought a level of consistency, a level of calmness to the things, to the play. And one of the most important things is that, yes, he organizes the team in the way to the set up, but he lets the forward players think for themselves. He can't teach them how to shoot, when to shoot. He said that what he can do is maybe talk about the spaces, where people are going to be, taking their time, and that's what Manchester United could really, when you've got these managerial changes, Enzo Maresca, Iriola, and Arteta's winning, and the way they play and the difficulties they may have when it comes to referees, clamping down on their corner tactics. Why not? Why can't Manchester United put a side together this summer to challenge for that Premier League title? Now, will it be a challenge? Well, I think for the first maybe 20 games, it will it will be. I think won't be close. I think Man United will build up a lead. When we get to December, I think Man United will build up to a 5 to 10 point lead. I think United will then progress on and do really well. And I think Man United will win the league by 5 to 10 points. Look at the league fixtures, the first 3 games, the first 10 games. You've got Spurs in there, you've got the City Derby in there. But hey, let's caveat it. Man United of the past. Well, this is not Man United of the past. Yes, you can use that to make your opinion, but at this moment in time, I'm looking forward. We're looking at predictions. And again, I'll fall back to that. These are predictions, and I'm looking at it going forward. And based on transfers, the way we are doing our transfers, how no journalist knows what we're doing is absolutely fantastic. There's journalists fighting journalists. Fabrizio Romano versus Samuel Luckhurst. One saying forget about it, the other one saying there's a chance that Tchouameni comes. It's ridiculous. So I think that you get that right. Manchester United can do that. Why not? The manager's there, the calmness, the style of play that he wants to play. I think there's a possibility there. I think there's a great chance. The league fixtures. Look at our fixtures at the end of the season. I mean, Spurs are the only team there. The game before last, yes, they could cause some trouble, and yes, it'll be a tough game. But Man United actually got a decent record at their stadium, and it might be all over for them. They might be challenging for something, but I can't see that. You know what? Look at the teams we're playing. Why not? Now, if you ask me what is the competition that I want Manchester United to win next season, hands down, it's the Premier League. If Manchester United went out in the first round of everything, and then you know what, by January got kicked out of the let's say I think the Carabao Cup starts pretty early. United get knocked out in the first round, lose every game in the Champions League. Obviously, I don't want that to happen. Obviously, but you know what, they get kicked out in that first 8 games of the Champions League, and then they get knocked out in the first game of the FA Cup. By for January, Man United playing 1 game a week. Just imagine you just got all in for the Premier League. Now, obviously, I don't want that. I want Manchester United minimum this season is to get in the top four, and the minimum would be to get a cup, win a cup, and not getting these scrappy battles with teams in the bottom half of the table. But I think Man United, looking at the league fixtures, you have to take advantage. You might not have to be doing their season planning. When you sit there as a coach, when I used to sit there as a manager, when I used to be a restaurant manager, I sit there and look ahead of what's coming, what seasons, who's, what's going to affect my business. You plan ahead. And that's what in the preseason and the end of the season and going to preseason, the managers and his staff, his coaching staff will sit there and look ahead and say, let's hash this out. What do we need? Where do we need? What's going to be the tough parts of the seasons? You know what? They've got to be looking at this and they've got to be thinking to themselves, you know what? We've got to give it a go now. Finally, we're going to be. Oh no, let's be a project team again. Man, we might well build up to something eventually, and it might not be this season. But for those reasons, I think that United have got a chance, and I think that chance for me is a big one. And yeah, the competitions we're going to be in, United will sign enough players. I've said it already. United are not stupid enough to go into a season with losing Casemiro and a depleted squad and have injuries. They are going to sign enough players. Yes, it's frustrating in the way we're doing it, but it's the right way. I have to say that we can only judge the transfer window only when it ends, and it hasn't. I guess for us as fans wise, we have to go through this process because of what's gone on before with the Glazers. And that's it. Manchester United will win the Premier League in 2027. That's my prediction. What do you think? Do you think I'm being ridiculous? What is your top 6 predictions? Have you got somebody else in there that you think will come out of nowhere, or do you think teams like Spurs have no chance because of the type of club they are? It's Spurs. Do you think Chelsea, the way they're always frustrating in the amount of players they keep buying and the mishmash of styles? Or do you think one of them might end up winning the league? And what is your predictions? One, two, three, four. Do you think Liverpool give it a chance? And yes, fair enough. Hands up. Yeah, a lot of you might be thinking that Man United will be successful, but not in the Premier League. Will get top four. Fine. I think let's have a discussion. Let's see how many people would just like me think that Man United have got a great chance. Because eventually it's going to come to a point where we'd have to start thinking like that. Maybe mine is a little bit too sooner, but as a Premier League prediction, you've heard me, and I'll say it again. 21 is coming. So, thank you very much for watching. Keep watching because it's going to be a bit of a ride and it's definitely going to be emotional. I'll be back.